and welcome to another edition of Talk of the Trinity. The last time you were joined by us in your ears, myself and Dave Martinez dance. Dave, I don't know where the wording went wrong there. I think it was the whole Bizot thing that threw me off. We were chatting about Bologna away, and we were hopeful that Villa would get a result. And of course, we got a massive 3-1 win there, despite their late consolation goal. Ollie Watkins popped up. We then travelled to Nottingham Forest for a potential rehearsal of the semi-final at the Europa League, but that's still 90 minutes away at the very least. And with me at the moment is Dave to talk about that game. And later on, we might be able to sub on Adbaz Barrett, who's having a late fitness test ahead of the podcast. Dave,
He's having
what
his
did you
calf
make?
checked.
He's having everything checked.
Yeah.
He's been getting giddy with all the positivity that he's had over the last few months, and just didn't feel quite buzzy,
Yeah, well,
like Spurs is a thing.
I'm here warming up. Martinez dance Dave, but I might be subbed. I might actually not start. Maybe Marco Bizot Baz might come in for the team. So I predicted a draw against Bologna and a win against Forest. I got it in reverse order. So where to begin? There's a lot of things going on. There's a gulf between the Premier League and other teams in Europe. In the Europa League. Well, I think in Europe as well. But there's a clear gulf, and that is something you've noticed all the way through our campaign. Because with the exception of the Go Ahead Eagles, that was a bit of a bizarre match, and I just think fair play to the Go Ahead Eagles and their support, and they got under the lads' skin there. A few changes didn't really work. Gets on, still in the side there, and him not fitting and just things not right on that one game. But even in that game, we're the better team if you look at the players. It's just we got turned over, which can happen. But there is a clear gulf, so we're going into the game. As we record, it's Tuesday evening, so I'm guessing it's going to be Wednesday when most people listen to this. We're going into the game, I'll say tomorrow, and we are the better side, and we just need to draw. I know we can lose by a goal, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is a draw, and I would guess we should achieve that fairly handily. They're interestingly enough, I thought, look, Celta Vigo were going to be the odds-on best team. Initially, I thought, Villa on final, and now Celta Vigo. Didn't they lose their first leg? I think I might be riffing. I know I said I wasn't paying too much attention to the side of the draw, but there's no kind of best side really. They're all getting they lost 3-0 to Freiburg. So they're very inconsistent, all these other teams around Europe. So probably I don't want to touch a chance fate. Probably the best team in the draw, other than us, are Nottingham Forest, which is a good segue to talk about what happened at the weekend. I expect us to get through against Bologna, and I expect Nottingham Forest to get through against Porto. Porto had a chance and bottled it a bit, and they have to go to the City ground. So I do think the game of the weekend was our dress rehearsal for the semi-final, and probably that's going to be the toughest tie. I don't want to say, oh yeah, if we get through into the final, we'll definitely win, but the Premier League teams are better than all the other ones. That's just it. Look at the Conference League, the Europa League. Granted, Champions League, maybe it's some of those teams are a bit hit and miss this season, but by and large, if you take away the top teams like the Paris Saint-Germain or the top teams around Europe who are in the Champions League, Premier League teams are much stronger.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the Premier League, the money it has, the number of teams it's got in Europe as well plays an advantage there, doesn't it? I mean, I'm gonna go opposite to you because I think Porto will get through. I think it'll be a close game on the night at the City Ground and Porto win on penalties because they've got Diego Costa in goal, who's a fantastic goalkeeper. And he just reminds me of the bloody Portuguese goalkeepers who used to knock England out of all of the international competitions. However, saying that, against Nottingham Forest, would I be too worried? After the weekend, no. I thought that whilst Nottingham Forest had spells, took their goal very well also, when we played that quick passing football, we looked dangerous. Morgan Rogers got the assist for Murilo's own goal. And then as the game went on, we created a lot of other great goal scoring chances. We could have won 3-1 easily. Let's be honest. Tammy Abraham should have scored straight after. Tammy Abraham, Ollie Watkins should have scored straight after the own goal. It was a great save by Sells. And Morgan Rogers probably on another day would have done better with that chance in the second half that he put over the crossbar. However, he's got to be knackered. He's got to be absolutely cream crackered and in need of a rest. And when you think about that game as well, we had to play Barkley to rest a couple of other players. Barkley did very well. He wouldn't be playing in the semi-final of the Europa League. And if we get to the semi-final, I think that Emery tries to exercise the ghosts of Conference League past when we got knocked out by Olympiacos, goes full strength, maybe prioritises that then to get to the final with the knowledge that actually 2 or 3 more wins in the Premier League should get us Champions League football next season. And we've got a great chance starting this Sunday, but that's after our next game against Bologna.
A lot of really good points there that I agree with a lot of what you've said. Let's talk a little bit about Morgan Rogers. So I actually do listen to an awful lot of other Aston Villa podcasts. And dare I say, I think they slightly format-wise and topic-wise copy each other. I know why. They probably think there's a similar audience and let's get people that have their views and let's run with something. And the media in general does this. But there seems to be this narrative now that it's kind of the what's happened Morgan Rogers. And Stan Collymore keeps on putting up on his social media, oh, he's tired now. And then, okay, so he missed. He hit over the bar. Every player in the Premier League, every attacking player hits over the bar. And there's this kind of like, oh, if Morgan Rogers earlier on in the season could have put that one away. I think that's going a bit over the top. It was a good chance he put his foot through it. There was a defender making a lunge. Sells was back on the line. I would have liked to see him score. But what's going on now is that this narrative that if Morgan Rogers last December or whenever would have put that away and there's a problem now. No, that happens every time. Morgan Rogers, even when he was, let's say, in great form, there were games where he was a bit anonymous and then he'd come up and score this brilliant goal. And he was, you said it, he got the assist at the weekend and he was in dangerous positions. Granted, he was subbed, I think, which is one of the first times that's happened all season. But, and there is something to the fact that he's played a lot of games. But I'm loath to go with this narrative that there's been some kind of huge drop-off from him and that there's some underlying issue and has he lost interest? Has his head been turned? I just think this is very normal for players over the season. They'll go through good spells and bad spells, and this level of panic because he might be interested in move elsewhere based on the fact that he hit the ball over the bar the weekend. I think it's going way, way over the top. He was poor at the start. He played really well. He's had some good, maybe not brilliant performances. That's every single player in the Premier League. And I think Morgan Rogers is a key player for us, regardless of if he's scoring or how well he's doing. And I'd like to fight against this narrative that we should all be really worried about Morgan.
I mean, the fact that he scored for us, got an assist for us, shows that he wants to stay. as much as missing shows that he wants to leave. And Morgan Rogers this year, I thought he was effective on Sunday. I thought he looked better when he got on the ball. Yes, he lost it a few times in the lead up to their goal, but it's not all Morgan Rogers' fault that Nottingham Forest have scored. The ball switched to the other side of the pitch, been pulled back to Williams, and he scored a cracking goal inside the near post. Morgan Rogers, at the moment, is playing better than he did at the very start of the season, in my opinion. You remember the Villa fans were ironically cheering him for getting a pass right against Fulham. He's looking more comfortable coming in off that left hand side. Keep him there for the time being. Keep him out on the left. If we can afford to rest him in a game, then give him a rest. We're winning by a few goals at half time and he started, or even this Bologna match, have him on the bench and bring him on for the last 30 to 20 minutes on that left midfield role and get him to take the game to Bologna when when it's almost settled at that point with 20, 30 minutes left. Bring him on, fresh pair of legs, and it also hopefully, and I don't think he needs this, but motivates him. He's not been dropped or rested in so long. The last time he was in the FA Cup, and then we had to bring him on up front anyway. And he's the first English player to have played in 100 games since the start of last season. There's not many more who have done that. The amount of running he does, the amount of big chances he creates, it's going to take its toll on you when you're trying to be the main maverick for a top end, because that's what we are, Premier League side. He probably needs a rest. It doesn't mean anything more than that at the moment.
Oh yeah, 100% agree. Yeah, let's rest him against Bologna. I agree. He shouldn't start. If we get into a bit of trouble, yeah, he comes on. But that last half an hour or 20 minutes, so it's effectively like a training match, and then ready to go again at home to Sunderland to start. That's perfect. He's played a lot of games. He's played a lot of minutes. I agree with that. But this kind of narrative of people trying to look for reasons that we should be worried and what's happened, that's nonsense. Actually, was it last season? We're definitely towards the end of it, he was very patchy. Is it last season or the previous one?
I think that
Was the one before? When did we sign him? Did we sign him the year we got fourth? Was it?
yeah, we signed him the
Yeah,
year before, and he was a
yeah,
little bit. Morgan Rogers, of course, was a little bit here and there, and
yeah.
not just Morgan Rogers is a signing. We've got Baz with us now.
Mm.
He's passed his fitness test. He's off the bench. He's ready to contribute. Baz, we're just talking about Morgan Rogers and Dave talking about the media and how they're really trying to sell a story because of his form at the moment that he's not interested. He doesn't want to be at the Villa anymore. He obviously wants to move on. However, when you watch that Nottingham Forest game, I'd have been worried if he wasn't tracking back, trying to win the ball. And Morgan Rogers was doing that against Forest. He was doing that against Bologna before. Baz, do you think that Morgan Rogers is obviously showing signs that he doesn't want to be a villain anymore? Or do you think it's just a case of the papers are trying to unstable us because one of their big six are going down to the championship?
So, firstly, evening, guys. Evening, everybody. It was. Martinez failed his fitness test. It was a choice between me and Bizzo to come in. So, we tossed a coin, and here I am. In terms of the Rodgers situation, it's not necessarily the press in terms of where my kind of angry gaze is kind of lent towards. It's more in terms of some of the stuff I'm seeing from other fans, other Villa fans, in terms of saying similar stuff. I mean, my simple answer to in terms of do I think he's shown he doesn't care? I think he's just shown he's knackered. I think
Yeah.
in terms of the stat, he's the youngest English player, or he's played 100 appearances, and he's in terms of nobody else has played that much in the last 18 months to 2 years. He's just somebody who's he's still tracking back and stuff like that. He's just running on it. He's running on the proverbial empty, really. And I think in terms of, yeah, he should have scored that opportunity. But I'd say in terms of from his perspective, even if it was true that he's agitating for a move out, and I don't think it is a situation where he's going to be delivering that ultimatum. I want to leave in the summer and all that type of stuff. But even if it was, you're not going to give up 6 weeks before the end of the season and before a World Cup in terms of when you're still, you got the inside edge, the inside track in terms of getting in that World Cup squad. But nothing's guaranteed at this stage. I think to suggest that he's just going to give up because he wants to go, I think that's slightly foolish on my part.
Oh, definitely. And I think with it, when you hear that he wants to leave because he wants to win trophies, then why wouldn't he want to win the Europa League? Oh, the Europa League's not good enough for me, but I do want to win trophies, but only if it's the Champions League at Bayern Munich. But just while you were saying thank you to the medical staff for signing you off for today, Dave and I were talking about how we feel that Morgan Rogers needs a rest as well at the moment. And really, we would look at resting him against Bologna, bringing him on for the last 20, 30 minutes to bring some spark to the game, to keep him fresh for Sunderland. Is that something that you'd agree with, or do you feel that Rogers needs to start and then potentially go off if the game is done and dusted after 45, 60 minutes?
No, I'd agree with you guys 100% there. I think in terms of you're looking at our upcoming run of fixtures, this is the obvious one to rest him, because I think in terms of Sunderland at home, big game, we need to win. Fulham away, after that big game, need to win. Hoping if Bologna goes well on Thursday, then the game after that is first leg of the semi-final. Need him in there. Spurs at home after that, we need him in there because we need our best team to send Spurs down, just so we can recycle the Newcastle banners from storage, just so we can mock another team. So I think this is the perfect time to rest him. Or if Emre is so kind of invested in him having to play, I'd be saying to him in terms of, say, if you score or make an assist, then you come off. just to motivate him, in terms of, so if that happens, we got a goal, so we're hopefully 3 to the good by that point, and then you got your rest and you've got the result in the bag. So that's the alternative way. But no, I'd rest him on Thursday. I mean, I think in terms of the way, I'm sure we'll come on to it in terms of the preview, Bologna a bit later on, but I think the way Emre is going to set up against Bologna is not so. I mean, obviously you want, in an ideal world, your best players, your best 11 on the field. But I think the way we're going to set up, it isn't as integral for him to be playing. So I think this is a perfect time to just give him a bit of a rest and enjoy the view of the whole tent from the halfway line.
So, Dave, if we give Rogers a rest, like we've all suggested, and I'd imagine that a lot of people on Twitter as well are suggesting, and we managed to get past Bologna, I feel that Emery turns his attentions more to the Europa League then, because as we just said prior to Baz being able to join us, he's getting rid of those ghosts from a couple of seasons past where we lost to Olympiacos. Will he then be thinking, Sunderland, not as important, I'll rest Rogers again, or I'll rest some of these other key players again, because our best opportunity at Champions League now is the Europa League. That's my focus. I want to win a trophy. We realistically only need 6 more points to get Champions League. Do you think it becomes a cycle that Rogers gets rested, or do you think that's naive of us to think?
I don't think that'll happen, and the reason why I don't think it'll happen is because I'll point to Ollie Watkins. Watkins has had a few extended periods this season where he hasn't been hitting the metrics, running as much as he had, I think, just from my naked eye watching on TV. I don't think he's making as many runs as he had been. That being said, Emery has stuck with him. Obviously, the lack of goals this season as well compared to other seasons. But Emery has, as I say, persisted with him because he trusts Watkins. He has a specific way of playing, and Watkins does what he's told, effectively, and it's the same with Rogers. So I think Emery talks about consistency a lot. So whereas we do think it's right to rest Morgan Rogers against Bologna, soon as he's happy that he's had that little break, he's back in there because he's on message. He does what Emery wants to do, and it's why Ollie Watkins has been favoured so much. And there's another question to ask about Tammy Abraham and coming on with 4 minutes to go at the weekend. You know, we really have to ask us some questions now about why we've signed him. But I think the fact that he's stuck with Watkins because he does the job, he follows his orders and commands. Rogers does the same. So, and Emery wants consistency. So as soon as he's fresh again, he's back straight away back in there. And just to come back to one other question you had about, do we just prioritise the Europa League? No, we treat it equally. I think he's going to treat the two games equal. We're not saying one's more important than the other. It's the same, effectively. Going to try and beat whoever, Bologna first, and then probably Nuts first. Or, you think Porto. Whoever. But beat Sunderland, beat Fulham, beat Spurs, hopefully. I think the entire world outside of that part of London will want us to beat Spurs.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think everybody is secretly hoping that, well, not even secretly hoping that Spurs go down. But before we get to them,
okay,
in a few weeks' time, we've obviously got Bologna this Thursday, and we'll preview it in a bit more detail now that the three of us are back together. That amazing TOTT strike force, and whether you're going to be watching the game naked like Dave does, I'm sure he just said, or from the pub like Baz does, there's going to be questions around that starting lineup. It's going to be, do we go with the same starting lineup as the away tie in Italy? Though it may not be as simple as that. We've already all touched on that we'd rest Rodgers. There is another player who may not make it to the game on Thursday because of them picking up a late injury for the third or fourth time this season, and that being Emi Martinez, of course. Marco Bizot came into the team, did well, made amends for that Newcastle game, the last time he appeared for us, where he came racing out of the box and decided to kung fu kick whoever it was who was clean free for Newcastle and got sent off. Baz, what do you see the starting lineup being when we play Bologna under the lights at Villa Park?
I think we're going to ring the changes. I mean, in terms of, I will be there under the lights on Thursday, not naked like Dave. I'll dress up for the occasion. But I think in terms of, we'll rest as many players as we possibly can. And I think in terms of, I think we'll play a slightly more defensive lineup as well, or certainly I would in terms of you taking Rodgers out. I think our two pivot in terms of front of the back four would be more of the defensive side of the ball, I think. And I think in terms of just following on from Dave's point, I think we prioritise Sunderland, Fulham, because I think in terms of, I think there is a bit of a variance in terms of how many points are going to be needed for Champions League. I think we'll come on to. I mean, in terms of, yeah, I think you've mentioned 6. It could be as low as 6. I think if you're looking historically, you're looking at 12. So I think in terms of looking at the fixtures, I think we want to try and get them as early as we can, especially in terms of the final 2 games. And also because if we are in the Europa League final, which I think we all hope we are, that's before the final game of the season. And so at that stage, you definitely, if we are in the final, you're definitely playing your full strength team at the final, and you're not wanting to go to Man City on the final day after that, regardless of whether we win or lose. If we are in the final, you don't want the pressure on that. So we want the job done as early, and I think that's what Emery will be saying. And so I agree with Dave in terms of, I think we won't be prioritising one over the other, particularly at this stage, because in terms of we want the 2 options. Either we qualify for the league or we qualify for winning. I think Emery, if you asked him, he'd rather win the Europa League. I think if he had a choice between the 2, but I don't think he's going to throw one away. So in terms of for Thursday, when I think it is going to be one of the few occasions for the rest of the season, if perhaps the only occasion in the rest of the season where we can actually not play a full strength 11. I think in terms of, I wouldn't be surprised if there was some potential left field picks in terms of I could see, that midfield two of Louise and Lindelof, for example. I think in terms of really kind of, I think Bogart's going to play. Might even have a, might even throw Garcia in. In terms of Bizzo will play. I would say. I think we'll just try and rotate as much as possible because I think in terms of the Bologna game plan is they're going to have to attack. And I think in terms of their normal style, to be fair, they showed pretty well in the first leg, man to man. It does cause people problems if we're off our game. But I think in terms because we're not going to have to force the pace and we're just going to have to hit them on the counter, really. And the first goal will be integral importance in this game because I think if we get that, then I think it is touch wood game over at that point. Really, because we will, if we hadn't shut up shop before, we definitely will be kind of if we go one up early on because Emre's even attacking Emre is try and keep it tight in the first half and nick a goal in the second, really. So I think in terms of defensive Emre would just be if in terms of in Mourinho parlance, if we could put 12 men behind the ball if we're 1-0 up, I think he'd try and find a way of doing it. So I expect plenty of changes. I think Abraham will play. Get Watkins some rest. I mean, I do share Dave's concern in respect of if he's not playing any games at all, and there is that envious glance over at what Marlon's doing at Roma. So I think, regardless of whether Bologna, in terms of good team, bad team, we got lucky, we played well. We'll always be thankful that they beat Roma after extra time because I would not wanted to have faced a motivated Marlon in a balmy Rome evening. I think he would have caused us some real damage just out of principle. But for me, I think this is the game where we rotate, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's at least 6 or 7 changes to the starting lineup as compared to the Forest game.
I'm going to slightly disagree with that one. I'll come straight in if that's okay.
No, of course you were going to be asked anyway.
Well, I'll come in before, just in case you went off on a tangent there.
No.
I think the player that we have to play is Ollie Watkins for 2 reasons. One, because we all want Morgan Rogers to get a rest. I don't think we should be taking both Rogers and Watkins out because then we could really, suffer up front with people who haven't had much game time. So I think if it's one or the other. But also, we need that counter-attacking threat. Just because Bologna are going to put pressure on us, going to come forward. So we can sit deep, but hit them on the counter. Have John McGinn doing his running, get the ball through to Watkins. And I think that can be our game plan for the 60 minutes. And then maybe it's Watkins off and Rogers on. But also, Watkins is playing himself into form. And he has really shown in the Europa League, last week, that he's back. He's back and he's good enough to get in behind those defenders and score. So I think for the 2 reasons, one, we need the threat, especially if Rogers isn't there, we play Watkins. But also, he's playing himself back in. So get out there for a good hour and get another goal and bring that confidence then back to the league. So that's why I kind of agree there should be changes, but I think we stick with Watkins.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with Watkins as well. I'm not fussed about or concerned that Tammy Abraham isn't playing too much, like the rest of you have said, because Emery has this way of bleeding players into the team over the course of half of a season, and then they really start to get more game time. It happened with Yuri Tielemans. Didn't get his first start until a 3-1 home win against Fulham, and he played on the left of the front three. Got an assist in that game, and then I think he got injured and came back in. It was the same with Ian Martin, hardly played last season. Barkley wasn't exactly put into the team straight away. Pau Torres wouldn't have been had it not been for that horrific injury to Tyrone Mings. However, that being said, I'm not worried about Abraham. I think for me that Emi Martinez will miraculously recover from his calf injury because it's Europe. He usually does for those games. I think we see the same back four: Cash, Lindelof, Pau, and Din. I wouldn't want to see Tyrone Mings coming in. Really sorry. I just don't think he's having the best of season. He's not exactly a good luck charm for us at the moment. And Lindelof and Pau Torres did very well in Bologna with handling the pressure. In front of them, I'd be having Anana and Tielemans again. Bogard, I mean, Dave knows how much I love Lamar Bogard. I'd have started him previously, but I'd leave him out at the moment, bring him on if we need to into the centre mid. Watkins up front, and the three behind is where I mix it up just that little bit. I keep John McGinn on the right. John McGinn, Baz, you'll be pleased to know I think John McGinn has been absolutely fantastic this season. Our player of the season, even. He's just been pure Aston Villa. He's embodied everything that's been good about us this season. On the left, because we do need to go that little bit defensive, but that's typical of Unai in Europe, whilst also creating chances and wanting to be dangerous on the transition. I put Ian Martson for that raw pace and the fact he can get back and cover Luca in. And in the 10, I'm going to give him a go because he hardly ever plays. Harvey Elliott for me. Put him in there, let him spot the runs of Ollie Watkins, play some through balls to him, and see what happens from there. Baz, am I deluded to think that Harvey Elliott may get some game time in this second leg quarter final that we're already 3-1 up in?
Well, if he doesn't play any part on Thursday, he might as well, go and get his Paddington Bear duffel bag and duffel coat and just hitchhike up the M6, back up towards Liverpool because he's never. I mean, in the league, we know he's not getting anything in the league, but in terms of, it's come out the contractual clause doesn't apply in Europe. This realistically is, if we're going as we all hope we do to the final, this is probably going to be the only realistic game you're going to have a chance of not playing your first choice 11. I think in terms of, I suppose, a different conversation in respect of whether you'd rather play Forest or Porto in the semi final if we get there. But I think in terms of, yeah, if he doesn't play today, then yeah, I mean in terms of them, I don't know if he have we even left him with a parking space at Bodymoor Heath, or have we just like scrubbed it out and just kind of put trainee kind of in his spot? Yeah, but I would play him. Certainly in terms of 45 minutes at least. I mean, if it was a situation where if you do play Rodgers, we'll start Rodgers from the bench and bring him on. Then Elliott first half, Rodgers second half. If you just want to make sure of that, but yeah, it'd be nice to give Harvey Elliott a send off because this will probably be his last time at Villa Park, if he's playing. And then he's in the director's box, which I'm assuming he probably doesn't turn up if he knows he's not playing. But yeah, I think in terms of, I think that's a good shout. I'll be playing him.
I mean, Harvey Elliott is obviously going to pop up in that final and score the winner. And then Unai Emery will go, well, yes, I deliberately dropped in to motivate him for that moment
Yep.
to complete the trilogy of Villa, Sevilla, Villarreal wins of the Europa League.
So if that happens, I think in terms of if Elliott scores a last minute winner and then Emre runs onto the field with a suitcase full of cash, as in like money in the bank, in terms of this was his plan all along, I think that's a great story in football of all time.
Would that, though, and I'll ask you both this, would that be a greater master plan than Tim Sherwood at home to the Blues in the League Cup,
Yeah.
where we deliberately played rubbish and then did well in the second half and beat them 1-0?
The ultimate rope a dope. As I suppose in terms of, I mean, the only way that plan that would be even better is if you're doing that against Wrexham nowadays, because that's the only team Blues care about now, isn't it, Wrexham? So I think in terms of on that level, but yeah, how's his coaching career getting on, Tim? I think he's got a bit quiet, hasn't he?
I mean, he was on Sky Sports News earlier telling us that Tottenham are going to stay up, but I still love him. I love the gilet. I love the double gilet. But lads, Bologna, we all feel that we're going to get through. What's the score going to be on Thursday? Who have we got in the next leg?
Okay, I think it'll be 1-1. I think Bologna might even take the lead, and that'll wake us up, and they'll still be pressing, looking for the equaliser, and then we'll get a goal to finish it off. That's what I would suspect will happen. I'm going for 1-1. And then next round, I think it's Forest. I think City Ground, it's, as we know, it's a tricky place to go to. And we haven't really spoken about this much, but we're recording the night after Leeds pulled out a great win against Man United. Those teams at the bottom can be fighting for their lives. So that draw against Forest the weekend, that's not bad at all. And then I just wonder if they're in the semi-final of the Europa League and they haven't secured their Premier League status, how seriously they'd be taking it, because Leeds have picked up, West Ham have picked up. Will Spurs eventually? I mean, do we actually lose our game to Spurs to kind of put Nottingham Forest under pressure so they'll take the league more seriously? But something tells me they may not actually have that fight or that urgency if they're still in relegation difficulty if we face them in the semi. But anyway, look, we will get through against Bologna. We're at home, and I think a 15-minute cameo for Harvey Elliott will be a fitting send off.
Baz, what do you think the score's going to be? So Dave thinks 1-1, so we get through 4-2 on aggregate and have Nottingham Forest in the next round. What are you saying the score's going to be, and who is it that we're going to have in the semi-finals if we get through? I mean, you might have changed your mind.
No, I mean in terms of broken record for me in terms of this podcast. I agree with Dave. I think it'll be 1-1. I think I especially the manner in which Dave said the game will go. Bologna will score and we'll equalise just to wrap it up and say goodnight. Yeah, that's kind of how I had it going as well. In terms of whether it's going to be Forest or Porto, I'd definitely rather play Forest. It's going to come down to the starting lineup, isn't it, really? Because I think in terms of, well, Forest showed from the first leg that they're definitely prioritising the league. And it was I think what we're contractually obliged to call a rather freakish own goal that got Forest their equaliser. I think in terms of if Forest play a similar, in inverted commas, weakened team again, I I don't know if Porto are going to make the. Well, you'd think they're literally not going to make the same mistake again of the bloke kicking it in from the halfway line past the goalie. So in terms of that sense, but I think in terms of, I think Porto would take it a bit more seriously at the City Ground. I do agree in terms of the atmosphere of the City Ground. If you don't take it seriously, even if Forest play a weakened team, I think in that scenario, Forest would do damage. But I think in terms of Forest, have got Burnley at home on Sunday. They are going to prioritise that game in terms of the starting lineup, and I think in terms of, see, we mentioned in terms of the result last night, Leeds winning. I think that gives them a bit of a cushion. West Ham and Spurs. I think catering orders for lasagna in London are going to be going up significantly in the East End towards the rest of the season. I have a sneaky feeling I think Porto will get the job done because I think Forest are not good. They're going to throw all the proverbial, I was going to say eggs, but let's go footballs. They're going to throw all the footballs in the Burnley basket because that's a massive game for them where nothing less than a win I think is going to be acceptable for them. So I can see Porto sneaking 2-1 on the night after extra time type scenario. But I think in terms of an atmosphere, even if it was a weakened Forest team in the semi-final, if we played them, it'd be two cracking games in terms of atmosphere at the City Ground at Villa Park. So I hope it's Forest. I think it'll be Porto. I think we'll draw 1-1, and we'll be all brushing up on our Portuguese on Duolingo in anticipation for the first leg.
So we're at a tie-break at the moment then, and it won't surprise either of you, but it won't surprise Dave to know who I think is going to play us in the semi-final. And I don't think it'd surprise either of you to hear that I think that we'll beat Bologna. I think we'll beat Bologna 4-2. I've got a feeling we're gonna put a few goals past somebody, but I think it'll be 4-0 up, and then at the end of the game, Bologna get a couple of goals back, which takes a bit of the icing off the cake, but it's still very edible because it's got some lovely jam in the middle. It's not
Yep.
chocolate cake. No, thank you.
No.
Um,
So out of interest, has there ever been a Villa game where you haven't thought we're going to knock a few past the opposition? Okay, because I think four is that's kind of like your minimum usually, isn't it? Like for starts, you think we'll be laying off the pace in the second half?
oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I've come up with a couple of ones and twos recently, so I've tried to I've tried to mellow out a little bit in my old age, but yeah, four for Thursday. It just seems right, and I think that if we were to play Forest, you look at the team we played at the weekend with Barkley, and that's not our strongest team. Obviously, Barkley couldn't play against them in the semi-finals anyway because of suspension. We probably have Sancho back, who's going to be improving because he wants to get a move somewhere. Um, I don't think we'd have any problems with Nottingham Forest home and away, especially with their relegation troubles that they've got. But like Baz and Dave won't be surprised because we've spoke about this before. I see Porto beating Nottingham Forest for those reasons that you've mentioned, but also because I think Porto are just a better team. Even though they've got Samu Agahoa out for the rest of the season, I just think that they're too strong for Nottingham Forest. So, and when I've looked at this previously, the one team who I thought are probably the favourites for the competition, because I've never thought that we were, is Porto. I think it's the hardest game we could have, and it'll be a true um, test of our character and our credentials as a force in Europe, as a force in the Premier League as well. But that being said, we've got to get past Bologna first, and we've touched upon the goalkeeping situation. Martinez, there are a lot of rumours today saying that he will be gone again in the summer. We've been expecting it. We've thought it all season. He's had a great season for us. The talk is that James Trafford is on our radar. Dave, is James Trafford somebody who excites you to take over from your beloved Emi Martinez?
I mean, yeah, I think you mentioned it before. Were we looking at Costa as a replacement for
Mm-hmm.
Martinez if he went? So if he was on our radar, obviously he is very good. So if we do play Porto, and it's a big if, but he could be. It could be tough. God, do I want to go penalties with him? Let's not think about that. But you know what I mean. But Costa was on our radar. I mean, I think James Trafford. Yeah, I mean, like we've seen someone like Quivin Kelleher, who was the reserve keeper at Liverpool, and so he got his move to Brentford. And there's always question marks on someone who's been a reserve keeper at a big club. Can they actually do it week in, week out? Now, I think Kelleher is having a great season actually, and it was a great signing for Brentford. So, and I suppose if you look at Emi Martinez, he was a reserve keeper before he came to Villa as well. So going by examples of reserve keepers at big clubs in recent times, the couple of examples I can think of when they've moved on, they've actually done really, really well. So going by that, I don't probably know James Trafford as well as you guys do. I haven't been following him at underage level in the same way you have. But from what I've to go on, I think it makes perfect sense that he'd be the replacement.
I have to say that I've not been following an underage Trafford, just for legal purposes there.
But you've been following an old Trafford instead.
Yeah, yeah, I have. Why not? We can all dream. What about you, Baz? Do you think that James Trafford is the answer to our who replaces Emi Martinez potential dilemma in the summer?
I think in terms of following Martinez, he's a world-class goalie. One World Goalie of the Year, won the World Cup, penalty shootout hero. He's almost irreplaceable, really, in terms of that level. I mean, we got him, as I say, when he was struggling to be the first choice at Arsenal, and we gave him the chance and the platform, and he's really taken on from there. But in terms of, we're not going to get somebody who's going to go straight in at that top level. In terms of Trafford, my view on him, good, not great. I think he's solid.
Mhm.
I think in terms of if we bought him, I wouldn't be tearing the proverbial or literal hair out. But it comes down to budget and how much money we've got. Because I think in terms of what I'd say, and again that links in if we're in the Champions League or not. But assume we're in the Champions League, which I think we'd need to be for Trafford to be. Yeah, that'll be the deal sealer. But assume we are. We're gonna even then we're only gonna have a certain amount of money. And I think in terms of if we can get him at a reasonable price and that saves us, you know, 10, 15, 20 million that you need to get like a top world class goalie. And we could spend that 10, 15, 20 million on another area of the squad, then I'd take that. You know, in terms of that kind of accommodation, that kind of compromise, because I think he gets you at a solid enough level to not worry. You know, in terms of that goalkeeping position, he's not somebody we'd buy and I'd be like, oh no, we're in trouble. So
Mm.
and yeah, and I think in terms of in the old Bruce Forsyth style, the price is right. Was it Bruce Forsyth or was it another
Yeah.
presenter? But in terms of, I think for that, if we can get a decent price, then yeah, he can come on down. You know, to Villa Park. I'd be perfectly happy with that.
Well, obviously, Dave wasn't happy with us talking about Emmy Martinez leaving because those who are on the audio, Dave has had to be subbed off. He'll be back on the next episode for us. For me, there's a few names that I would rather see than James Trafford, and that's not being offensive. I feel that James Trafford is good, not great, like you've said. I'd want an elite level goalkeeper. However, I am going to contradict myself with three of the four names that I'm going to give you because three of them aren't elite level goalkeepers. Diego Costa, I think, would be the elite level goalkeeper that we should be going after. Yes, he probably cost 50 to 60 million. And if we got into the Champions League, he's still in his mid 20s. He's got another 10 years on him. So it's good investment. It's 5 to 6 million per year, bringing him in. Another goalkeeper who has the potential to be elite, joined an elite club in the summer, but really hasn't played very much and isn't playing tonight. Chevalier at PSG. Made a few mistakes at the start of his PSG career and he's found himself out of favour there. Going on to the two that are definitely not elite, but are two good English goalkeepers, one with a huge amount of potential. The other one has been a good Premier League goalkeeper for a number of years and still probably has 10 years left in him. Dean Henderson at Crystal Palace. I think is a cracking keeper and deserves another shot at the higher end of the league without being horrible to Palace there. And the other one, a player who's really done well in the Championship this year on loan from a Premier League team, 13, 14 clean sheets this season, 24 years old, Carl Rushworth. He's been linked with being called up to the England squad at one point. He's been linked with Barcelona as well. He could be the type of goalkeeper who, if we do keep Martinez, we bring him in. He plays the cup games. He plays some of the Premier League games against lower teams, though that isn't really a done thing nowadays. But he becomes the natural successor to Emmy Martinez then, and you've got him for a good 10 to 15 years, potentially.
Yeah,
Just
I think that would have to be the stipulation for me in terms of Martinez would still have to be to bring him in. I wouldn't want him frustrating to the starting lineup. And I think in terms of, I'll throw in, like I say, I'll qualify this by saying I wouldn't go with this, but just as a curveball, and it does come to the value in terms of if you can, as mentioned in terms of Trafford, maybe a bit of a discount in terms of your elite goalie, but there's some goalies who could potentially be like a real pennies on the pound in terms of investment, but for obvious reasons when I say the name. Would you go for somebody like a Nana at United? He's currently still on the books. I mean, he's on loan at the moment, away from Old Trafford. They've got it appears their goalie of the future. They had their coin toss involving Martinez and decided to go the other way. But I don't think you could argue from their long-term building perspective that they made the wrong choice. I don't think I think he's had a solid debut season. I think he will get better. So you'd think in terms of they'll be moving, you, a big money signing for them a few years ago for various reasons hasn't quite worked out. If United came calling and they were kind of, well, we like what you did with Rashford and Sancho. We're going to give you another cheap deal in terms of him. If you're looking like this might be even too low for even United, but if you're looking like a 5-10 million pound deal just to get rid, would you go that low in terms of that, or would you say, you know, thanks, insert name of manager here, but no thanks. If that gave you more money to potentially, go and improve other areas of the squad.
I would write Anana and just put Amadou in goal, to be completely
Yeah.
honest with you. I don't think Andre Anana is good enough. I think he probably needs to leave the Premier League and go and build his reputation up again elsewhere. I'd rather have Tom Heaton from Man United. And it's horrible because Anana's made mistakes and they're not all his fault. There's a team of players there where the ball could be one higher up the pitch and that. But he just doesn't instill confidence in you. And as soon as he makes his first mistake, you know that the whole tent will be on his back. If I was looking at other goalkeepers in the Premier League that could make the step up to us, some with potential despite their age, and that's late 20s, I'd be looking at Perry at Leeds, Brazilian goalkeeper. He's done well for them. Rofes at Sunderland has had a decent season as well. And then you've got Jordan Pickford, who's probably had his best ever season for Everton. I wouldn't necessarily say that, no, I would necessarily say that none of those would be my first choice. My first choices would be the ones that I'd mentioned before, except for maybe Jordan Pickford, if you could get him for 20 to 30 million. But I think he's so valuable to Everton and so beloved by the Toffees that you'd have to pay a premium to bring him in as your number one.
Yeah. I'll throw in another waspish one. In terms of if Spurs go down, would you go for Vicario on a
I
cheap
mean,
and an assumption that they're going to have to again get people off the wage bill?
he's not done badly for him, has he? He's shown that he's a good goalkeeper. I think again he's let down by the players around him, but there is talk that he's going to go back to Italy. So yeah, I'd rather one of the ones I mentioned at the start. There's other goalkeepers out there as well, aren't there? There's ter Stegen at Barcelona, who isn't getting a look in at the moment, went on loan to Girona. You've also got people like Jan Sommer who will be leaving Inter Milan. Not necessarily saying that we should go after him. Um, and there was another one. Oh, Mike Maignan at AC Milan. If they're not going to win the league there, which it doesn't look like they're going to do, then you've got Svilar at Roma as well. I think there's an abundance of really good goalkeepers, and we can certainly do better than some of the names that both of us have did about here. I mean, the other thing
Scott
is that
Carson?
I'd take Scott Carson, yeah, of course, too right. I mean, it could be that it's Bizot in goal. I wouldn't be too pleased with that, really.
No.
And that Zich is his backup, and he gets into it eventually. But I think that if we want to maintain what we've started here, then we need to be going after goalkeepers who have the potential to be elite that will either get us to where we want to go or we can sell on for bigger money in the future and gradually become an elite team that way.
Yeah, I think in terms of there's maybe a certain level of financial compromise you would make, but yeah, I think Bizzo in terms of that level, I think in terms of able deputy, I would not, similar to yourself, I'd be worried if he was first choice. and our only senior goalie come week one of the 2026-27 season.
I suppose one other goalkeeper that we haven't mentioned, though we have mentioned goalkeeper from the same team, and I'm going to say, hi Joe, how are you? Verbruggen at Brighton is getting a lot of praise at the moment. He's linked heavily with Bayern Munich at the moment.
Yep.
Would you mind seeing the Bartman in goal for the Villa?
See the whole end chanting, do the Bartman, do the Bartman. One for our older listeners there.
Yeah.
I think in terms, from a defensive perspective, it'd be interesting if we did get him, just because in terms of the stats show, he doesn't attack corners. He's very much stays on his line, which is the opposite to Martinez, who is one of the most aggressive in terms of going to try and attack the ball. So I think in terms of sort of Verbruggen, it would be, would we want to change our defensive setup that much from set pieces when in terms of, in terms of most of the talk goes in terms of our attacking set pieces. And I think in terms of, I think stats over the last 3 seasons in Europe, us and Arsenal have scored the most. So that's where the focus goes. But in terms of just as important from a defensive perspective, and that gets trained and drilled over, weeks, months, years in terms of season. So would you switch the system from a defensive perspective that much to bring Verbruggen in? I probably would, but he is a decent shout and he is a decent goalie. But yeah, I just don't think he fit. Yeah, I just don't see us switching that much from a defensive perspective to change to a goalie of his profile.
But I'm sure that it's going to be a topic of conversation that we'll have over the coming months, along with other players. You know what I'm like. I love to put out, should we sign this player? Should we sign this player? And some of them retired from football 50 years ago, but you have to ask the question.
When you said Joe, I thought you were on about Joe Hart.
Well, maybe. No, I wouldn't say that. Ben Foster, yeah, not Joe Hart. But whilst we might not agree on the goalkeeper things, whilst we may not agree on everything Villa, we do both feel that this Thursday, under the lights at Villa Park, where you'll be, we will see Villa get through to the semi-finals of the Europa League, a second semi-final in European competition for the boys in claret and blue since Unai Emery has got us back into the European hunt. Next time, we'll obviously be discussing the game and looking forward to Sunderland. But we just want to say thank you to everybody who has listened, watched our podcast. It's very much appreciated. I know Dave would like to say thank you to all the other podcasts out there for listening. He's given you some good little nuggets for you to take away. But whether you're listening from the Holt End, from the Trinity Road, from the Witten Arms, or from your sofa, let's hope that whether you decide to watch the Villa naked or in your birthday suit or just in a full kit like a proper wanker, that Thursday night we are very, very happy with the outcome of the game. I can't think of anything else to say because all I'm thinking about now is naked men. Cheers, Star. Thank you very much. Up the Villa.